nerds, what's up? Recently, there has been a lot of discussion here on BookTube about like what does YA mean, and kind of the discussion of how maybe YA is being overtaken by adults, and like talking about the new adult and how new adult doesn't really exist yet. Two videos that I'm thinking of in particular was the Bookmarked episode. Hailey, Hannah, and Zoe, the three of them do the weekly live shows, and so one of their episodes was about YA, and then Francina from Francina Simone has made a couple different videos about YA, so all of those will be either linked up in the cards or linked down below or both. I just kind of wanted to talk about my thoughts on it too, because I think it's really fascinating talking about, like, well, first of all, young adult versus new adult, middle grade, children's. All of those words aren't genres, they're categories, generally mean what the themes are going to be and the age range of the characters. So let's just get right on into this video. Let's do it. If you've watched all of the videos that I previously mentioned, you'll have some of this backstory, but for those of you who haven't watched any of those, we're essentially talking about age category. The young adult genre is what, or I'm gonna end up saying genre a lot, but YA is not a genre, it's a category that is about the age range and generally what themes you're gonna see. It is not a genre, because the genres are the fantasy and the contemporary. It goes under the umbrella term of YA or new adult or children's, etc. But I'm going to probably end up saying genre more than once, so sorry in advance. YA is what a lot of us here on BookTube end up reading, and it has become very popular in the last few years, and Twilight really did that for us. The Hunger Games was also a big one. Divergent, that time frame of when those books came out really brought YA into the light. It has become really popular since then. We could talk about publishing, and I don't really want to talk about it too much because I don't know enough to like be able to speak to that, but I do know that sometimes publishing is why things get categorized as young adult when really they're more adult or new adult, because if they're not categorized as YA, then they won't sell as well, because the new adult genre is basically non-existent. The new adult genre would be from like 18 to 25, maybe even 18 to 30, versus young adult is supposed to be like high school age, 14 to 18, and I might be not perfect on these age ranges, but a lot of times when you write characters that are just a little bit older, if you don't put them in the young adult category, publishers are worried that they won't sell. That's a whole nother thing that I don't know too much about, but that's a general fact of the publishing world. So let's talk about some books that have themes that don't fit the age range, or their age range doesn't even fit the YA category, but we place them in YA. The number one is over here, and I'm not pulling these all out, but it's A Court of Thorns and Roses and Throne of Glass. Our characters in these books are older. A Court of Thorns and Roses, she is 17 when the books start, and I think she's 19 by the time the books end. However, this book is about her essentially getting married. There's other things going on, but a lot of it is about marriage. That is a very new adult or adult topic, not young adult. And then Throne of Glass, when the book starts, I believe she's 19. So she is an adult, she's not a child, she's not a teen. The themes of this are very much about like politics and stuff like that, so that's also a very adult category, although our main characters are young. Another great example of this is Nevernight. The themes of this book are very adult. We are watching our main character and her fellow teenagers learn how to murder people. There is extensive violence and sex in this book. I'm not in any way ever going to say that you can't write teenagers who do things like this, because there are teenagers who have sex. There are teenagers who are put in bad situations and stuff, so like not specifically in assassin school, but things like abuse and whatnot. I think that this book could have been aged up, and you could have had a set of characters that are older, the themes would have been the same, and it would have felt less inappropriate for some people who don't like this book so much. I personally love this book. She feels like a 19, 20, 21, 22, 23-year-old. That's how old she feels, so that's a whole nother thing. There are many things that could be happening in any of these given situations. You could have an author who's writing a set of books and they have aged the characters up. They are 19 or 20, and then editors and publishers say this won't sell unless they're younger because YA is what's really popular, and so then they age the characters down but they leave all the themes the same. Or you could have an author who is writing a 16-year-old and who doesn't really know how to write for the audience that they're writing for. And I don't necessarily think that like any one of these things is like a detriment, although I do wish that we could have more separation. Like when we're reviewing books, I think it's important to state how old the characters are. Just like we talk about rep in LGBTQIA and in race and ethnicity and in cultural and all this stuff, I think it is also important to talk about how old the characters are that we're reading. One, don't dismiss how old your characters are, because on the other side of things, there are times when I've read books where the characters actually feel like they're 16. A lot of contemporaries where they actually feel their age. One that I can think of is An Unexpected Everything by Morgan Matson. She's supposed to be 17, I think, maybe 16, and she feels like a 16-year-old. I don't necessarily want to read about your life decisions that you think are really important, but like in my perspective, they're no longer really important. And it's important for 16-year-olds to have those books, absolutely. And so I think it's important for us to recognize the age and separate them out. Another example of what I'm trying to talk about that I'm not having great words for is A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. This is technically an adult book, but it gets claimed as YA all the time. But our main characters are 19 and 23, and this is a very adult-themed story. This is not about coming of age. This story is about political intrigue and dealing with warring, also like life and death situations. Like, this is not a teen book. This is an adult book. But the characters and the way that it's read is not like a stuffy old adult book. It's read as a new adult book, which is why I think that we should bring this category new adult into the light and make it popular, because I think that it's important to separate these two stories out. Young adult got really big when my generation, who's now 26, you know, and years within my age range, we were the teens when young adult became really popular, when Twilight was big, and when Allegiant and Divergent and Hunger Games and all of those books, when all of those books got really popular, we were the age range that they were catering to, and we were the first ones that got it. And so now, as we age, we need our own category that is dealing with the themes that we want to read about, because if we continue to read, if you like reading books that are set for younger ages, then you go do you. But if you're complaining about 16-year-olds feeling and acting like 16-year-olds in books, then I think that's where there's a problem. And I'm guilty of it, absolutely. And I'm trying to be better and more mindful of the books that I pick up and trying to delve further into the adult category, because the new adult doesn't exist yet. So, okay, I'm gonna go delve into the adult category and I'm gonna figure out what authors I like and what types of themes that I like to read within the adult category, because it's not fair for me to be reading books about 14-year-olds and being like, well, they were immature. Yeah, no kidding, of course they were immature, they were 14. And they're written for a 14-year-old to read and to learn about, learn through. And that's one thing that I really love about books, is that by reading something, you get to experience something new that you may never experience in your life, or that you maybe are going to experience, and now you have this book to refer back to, and it's more subconscious than that, but it's a really important skill to have. And reading does that for you. It helps you understand bigger pictures and stuff like that. This video is all over the place. I think that this conversation that we're having in this bookish community right now is really, really important to recognize. Books right now, through the publishing industry, are not getting their own category necessarily, and so like we need to be actively aware and working towards categorizing them ourselves. If we show that we want more books that have older characters and that have different themes than young adult, it will happen. Like, that's how the young adult genre happened, is somebody wrote a book and no one thought it would be popular, and then it was really popular, and so they were like, oh, maybe we should write more books like that. It's why there were so many books after Twilight that were like Twilight, and it got old because they were too similar. But like, that same thing will happen if we show that we want older characters. So like lift up those books that have the older characters, like Darker Shade of Magic, that's a perfect one. Also, like, don't be afraid to leave YA, especially for those of you who are feeling like I'm feeling, which is just that like YA feels too young sometimes. Sometimes it feels great, like Nevernight is the perfect example. And these books are perfect examples too. Like, these are realistically not young adult, even though they're categorized as young adult. And that's a whole different thing that we could talk about, like, within publishing again. But I'm talking about more like ourselves. Like, if we like books like this, books that are talking about older stuff, like, don't be afraid to delve into the adult section. It's really intimidating to me for sure, and so it's hard for me, at least. I've found some good things over there. So I think just like there are misperceptions from adults looking at YA going, that's not a real book, like that's not real literature. You know, all that bullshit that happens all the time, those creepos who come into our comments every once in a while and are like, you're reading books for children. I think there is also a misperception sometimes in our minds as readers who mostly read YA that we are afraid of the adult section because all it is women writing about their bad sex lives and wishing for better marriages, or talking about their broken marriages, or alternatively like old white dudes only writing about young white dudes in fantasy novels. Like, I think that that's all we think that exists in the adult category, and like, I'm not saying that that's not the majority of it, but I am saying that there are other books out there that we could read. Pretty sure Sassy, which a lot of people have been talking about, I'm pretty sure that's an adult book. I just recently read When Katie Met Cassidy, which is an adult novel about a female-female romance, and it's kind of about first love, but also about like first true love. I read this and When Dimple Met Rishi, like immediately after one another, and they feel very much the same, even though this is about 30-year-old women and this is about two teenagers who are like 17, 18, 17, 16? They're in high school. Another adult book that is about marriage and family is Other People's Houses. This book is one that I really liked because it reminded me a lot of my childhood and how I grew up, because there's a cul-de-sac with these parents who are all kind of friends, and my dad lived on a cul-de-sac and all of the neighbors were all friends. It had some nostalgia feeling in there. I'm not saying that I have a perfect list to give you, because I don't, because I'm new to the adult genre too. I'm just saying that, like, maybe reach out and try a book. You're not gonna like every book you read, obviously, and the themes are different. So like, yeah, maybe initially they'll be like, oh, I don't know if I like this because it's different than what I'm used to reading in YA, but like, maybe we do need to start branching out. Even though all the old stuff is definitely old adult and very stereotypical maybe, there's plenty of new people writing books all the time that are in the adult genre. So like, I'm sure someone's writing something good. I hope that people like good books. If we show that we're reading more adult books, then the publishing industry and the authors will be more willing to expand their writing styles and their publishing abilities, and they'll publish more widely. So I'm not saying that anybody needs to do that. I'm saying that if you're frustrated with YA, then perhaps that is something you can try. And this video was a hot mess. I wanted to show you guys some different books as well. So some of my favorite young adult and adult books. One of my favorite adult books is also Seas of Snow. This is a mystery thriller. It follows a girl who is 14. It's a historical fiction novel, and then it also follows the adults of that story years later. And ooh, this is a good one. It is sad and it is great. Huge trigger warnings for abuse and sexual abuse. You also have We Were Liars. This is a young adult novel. This is also a mystery, and it's about a girl who can't remember the last time that she went to her family's island and with her friends, and nobody will tell her what happened last summer that she doesn't remember, and so she's now back, or maybe it's a few years ago, but she's now back for the first time and everyone is keeping the secret, and woo, it was good. Some more young adult novels that deal with very adult topics. Perks of Being a Wallflower is very much a high school story, but it does have sexual assault in it, and I think that this is a very good representation of how to write teenagers and how to write teenagers who are dealing with hard stuff too. Also have Burned by Ellen Hopkins. All of Ellen Hopkins' books basically have teenage characters for the most part, and they all are dealing with very intense things. This one is raised in a religious yet abusive family. She writes all sorts of very dark topics and with teenage main characters, and I think, again, most of the time I think she does a good job of writing teenagers dealing with those things that feel like teenagers. Some great adult books that I've read are The Order of Nature by Josh Scheinhardt. This book is about a man who is in college. He goes to the Gambia to volunteer teach there, and in the Gambia it's illegal to be gay, and he falls in love with a Gambian man, and this is a very rough, sad story, but very, very good. Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. This is an adult novel. You watch the characters as children and you watch them as adults. It's a sci-fi that is really hard to explain without giving things away. As children, Kathy, Ruth, and Tommy were students at Hailsham, an exclusive boarding school secluded in the English countryside. It was a place for mercurial cliques and mysterious rules, and teachers were constantly reminding their charges of how special they were. But now, years later, Kathy is a young woman. Ruthie and Tommy have re-entered her life, and for the first time she's beginning to look back at their shared past and understand just what it is that makes them so special and how that gift will shape the rest of their time together. This is one of my favorite novels I've ever been forced to read by a class. So freaking good. So those are just some examples of books that either are adult that are great or that are young adult and actually act like young adult. I also could go on a whole tangent about how the word young adult is for age range of 14 to 18. Young adult in my mind means a young adult, which would be like 18 to 23, but that's a whole different conversation. Really, the age range that is defined as young adult, in my opinion, should be called teen, because those are teenagers, and then young adults are people who are learning how to like pay rent for the first time and being on their own for the first time and going to college. And what? Why is young adult called young adult? But that's a whole different tangent I could go on. We can't control the fact that that's what they've named the age range. They either need to change the age range or they need to change the name. But the point is that we need more books that are also from the age range of 18 to 30. Like, I don't want to only read about marriages being destroyed at 40 or learning how to graduate high school, because I'm in the age range right in between that. Where are the books about me? I think that's the problem. A lot of us who are my age are feeling like we're being left out. And that's how people who were young adult, who were age range of the young adult age felt before. And so I think that we have some power here to change the way that we're getting books. I think that that's possible if we work on how we vote with our dollar and vote with our library card and all of those things. I think that we can make this happen if we think about it a little bit more broadly, if we choose to. And so, I don't know, how did you guys like this video? Leave your comments down below. What do you think about this whole topic? What thoughts do you have? Do you think I'm completely talking out of my ass? Or do you agree with me? What do you think? How do you think? Tell me all the things. I just really like reading books, and I want to read books about people my age too. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed. Make sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. I make videos every Thursday and Saturday, so you can always hit that little notification bell if you want to be notified every time I post a video. I also have all my social media linked down below always, so you can always check me out on all my other different accounts. And I will see you guys very soon with a new video. Bye! I wish I could